Welcome to the Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of the Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, imagination. I'm Vince Kramer, your host, and welcome to the Miracle You, where you learn about the magic of living your life by finding the example in real life. One of the most powerful things that we can realize as individuals is as we come together in community, we become more powerful, and we're able to empower others through our community. Our being helps them in their being. Our guest today is going to share about how the people around her inspired her, how her parents led her in a direction to see the value and the opportunity in everything. Her story is amazing, and what she's experienced in her life as a child and in growing up in Africa, up through what she's experiencing now in sharing herself, her gifts, her talents in a way that is opening up the world for other women to share their story and find empowerment in that. You bring so much to the world. And I hope through today's discussion that you have an opportunity to understand that you are unique and that you can open doors that no one else can open. I'm with Getrude Matshe-Kanicki today. She's an inspirational speaker who has been described as a vibrant bundle of African energy whose zest and passion for life inspires everyone she meets. Getrude is passionate about helping people achieve their full potential, find their individual life purpose, and find their individual success. This makes her an energetic, inspirational, and enlightening speaker. Getrude has written several books and is now a writing coach for aspiring authors. She is the founder and CEO of the Africa Alive Education Foundation, an organization that supports HIV orphans in Zimbabwe, and she created Walk on the Wild Side Tours, a symbiotic tourism company that takes tourists to Zimbabwe to work with HIV and AIDS orphans. Getrude, are you ready to share the miracle of you with the imagination?
Yes. Good morning, Vince.
Good morning. Like we were just talking before we started the interview, it's afternoon here in Colorado Springs, but it's so great to have you with me today. I'm pretty excited, and one of the things I want to delve right into something else that you're doing. Tell me a little bit about the Herstory Circle. I know you're the global curator and the founder. What's the Herstory Circle all about?
Oh, the Herstory Circle came about through a mishap. I contribute to the Huffington Post, and they are currently publishing a series of women's stories in a series called Herstory. And I put it out there to my community and said I wanted to interview a few women. In 48 hours, Vince, I had about 650 women respond, agreeing to be interviewed. And I thought it was a little bit strange because normally I'll get 50, maybe 60. And so I went ahead and started interviewing. This was in November last year. And I interviewed 100 women, wrote the articles and submitted them to the Huffington Post, and they published not a single one. Needless to say, I was gutted. And I had found that I managed to create a very safe space for people to talk to me about their lives. The women opened up and shared some of the saddest, most joyous moments. You know, it was a variety of stories. And so I went back to all these women and I told them what had happened and that I still wanted to use the content in some way. And my initial idea was to start a Herstory podcast, a Herstory TV, and a Herstory magazine. So I could curate all of this amazing content and keep doing it because I enjoyed it so much. And then 5 weeks ago, I was involved in a biking accident. So I am recovering from congestive heart failure. And in my recovery, my husband bought me an electric bike so I could get out of the house and exercise every day. And on the one day when I had done the best, I managed to cycle all the way to the city and back, which is 20 kilometers. But on the way back, I was hit by another biker on the motorway, and he knocked me off my bike. And I fell onto the motorway, the oncoming traffic coming towards me. I was missed by 5 centimeters by a big truck. I remember watching the whole thing in slow motion. I could see him coming at me. So I slowed down. My bike is pretty fast, but everything happened so fast. And this big truck was coming towards me, and I'm on the road. I have no idea how this man missed me. I just remember him coming to pick me up and people stopping their cars, everybody coming to try and help. And this man shaking like a leaf. He was white, and he just said, "I don't know how I missed you. I don't know how I missed you." I was shaken, but not hurt. I came out of that accident with a small scratch on my finger, my elbow, my knee. But the next day, I was black and blue on the left-hand side of my body, the side that I fell on the road. And I couldn't move. I was in so much pain for almost a week. I was sitting on this couch, and I would meditate every morning. It was like an energetic hit. It's the only way I can describe it. I felt like the universe had stopped me for some reason, and I started meditating every morning, and I would ask the questions, what is my next step? What is my next step? And it was like I was dreaming with my eyes open, and I've had a few of these dreams before. I know them now, but it came to me like an image, like a picture, with silos, little groups of 10, with spikes going out, and then 10 and spikes going out. And I thought maybe I should bring all of these women together in circles of 10 somehow. And I put on Facebook 5 weeks ago, if I was to host and curate an international women's conference in 1,000 locations with 100 speakers each, who would be interested? So the idea I had was that I could connect 1 million women in a year by hosting 1,000 conferences, having 100 speakers in each conference who would invite 10 friends. So we had 1,000 women at each event, and 1,000 times 1,000 is 1 million. And with no advertising, just through that one Facebook post, we now have 250 locations all over the world locked in. We have 850 speakers already registered, and we're still looking for more speakers. And it's been the easiest and most fascinating thing I've ever done. I wake up every single morning, and there are 5, 6, 10 new people in a different country, in a different city, in a different village saying, "I've heard about the Herstory Conference. I want to take part." And it's connection that I find I have created for the women who've come onto this platform. There is a need for people to connect in physical spaces. In the past, especially for us in Africa, we had women's circles. You were never alone. You always had a group of 5, 6, 10 women you could talk to, consult with, share with your sadness, your happiness, your grief. And that seems to have broken down in Africa, in the Western world, and there is a craving for it. This is what I found with what I'm creating with the Herstory Conference. When I come online and talk to the women, that is the one thing that they all seem to thank me for, that they were lacking connection, and this platform has created that. And so I took it a step forward. I always do things wanting a social impact. I've been to a lot of conferences, personal development workshops, just to better myself. And I always come home with a bunch of business cards. I stay connected to maybe 2 or 3 people after that, but it doesn't go any further. And I thought, what could we do with all of this feminine energy and harness it in such a way that we could have some tangible outcomes in each of the locations where we are. So it's now a social impact conference where every location picks 2 projects to get behind. One has to be local in the community. It has to be around women. It has to be around children, the elderly, and the homeless. And if that location has the ability to pick another location, it has to be offshore, somewhere in the developing world, again, centered around the same themes. And so this conference is really a bridge between women in the developing world and women in the Western world, where we can share our stories, we share our ideas, we uplift, we inspire each other. And I tell you, Vince, when I wake up and listen to the audition videos that are coming through every day, I could have a woman in Vancouver, Canada, whose child has died of leukemia at the age of 3. And I listened to a story of a woman in Zimbabwe who has lost 6 of her children to AIDS. And the pain and the experience is exactly the same. We are more similar than we are different. And it taps into the ethos of the conference. My message that I was born to share with the world is the Ubuntu philosophy. And Ubuntu ngamuntu ngabantu says a person is only a person through other people. It's the condition of being human. In Africa, we believe that humanity is like the human body. We are cells of the same organism. There's no you, there's no me, there's only we. So if I cut my finger and I start to bleed, my white blood cells will rush to that point to heal it. In a week's time, you can't even see the scar. And that's how we should be responding to each other in the world. And the world's problems are so simple. They are so easy to solve if we work together and work in the collective.
That is so powerful in what you're saying. And Mary and I, with Imagine Miracles, agree so much. We have formed a community because community is so important. We call it the Imagination Miracles. And it's amazing some of the things that you're bringing to the world and some of the eyes that you're opening. Just the fact that people are able to be heard starts that healing process. That's the white blood cells, like you say, and that is.
We actually say that a problem shared is a problem halved. The minute you tell somebody else, they carry it with you. You're not alone anymore.
Oh, that's a great statement. It's almost a mantra that the world should live by, that knowing that just sharing, you've halved your problem. And that's so powerful. Tell me a little bit more outside of the group. What else are you doing to share the miracle of you?
Well, so outside of the group, we have a Herstory TV now, where I interview all of these women sharing their stories. We are curating a Herstory magazine that's going to be coming out once a month, and a series of anthologies of all of the women's stories. I have a publishing company here in New Zealand, and I've always specialized in memoirs. I love personal stories. That's all I read. I can't read fiction. And so I thought, what if I curate all of these women's stories and create a series of books, very similar to Chicken Soup of the Soul. Mm-hmm. And because we have so many women, we'll probably eventually have them themed. So we're busy putting all of that information together and sharing that both in a digital format and electronically.
Wow, that's awesome. You know, the interesting thing, Jack Canfield is one of my mentors, and Jack, yours too. Awesome. Yes. Jack has shared with me several times just how many lives that the chicken soup has affected. And the interesting thing is about our podcast that we're on today, The Miracle You, is about helping people understand and feel that they're not alone. And the stories in the books that you're going to send out, and the stories in the conferences, it will bring people to a place where they realize that sometimes we look at it from a distance and say, oh my gosh, nobody's experienced life the way I am. It's all me. And all of a sudden, when you realize that you're not alone, we even have our problems again there, knowing that we're not alone and others have gone through it. That was a great story about the bike, but I know that there's some things that happened earlier in your life that really opened you up to pursuing and helping people in the world. Could you share some of those with us?
I have lived a fairly magical life is the only way to describe it, but very, very spirit-led. I have found myself, Vince, in places where I look back and I think, how did I do that? And I can only say that I am a sum total of every single human being I've ever met. The kindness, the generosity, the guidance that I have been given throughout my life has made me very present to people. I don't bump into people by accident. And I think a lot of times people sleepwalk through life and they miss the magic. I've had people say to me, Getrude, how did you do that? So I'll give you a few examples. When I moved to New Zealand, I came here with my husband and 3 kids. They were all little, under the age of 12. And we moved to a new country, one, to try and find a safe country to bring up our kids. The AIDS pandemic was rife at the time, and there was no medication in Zimbabwe when we left in 1999. And so I wasn't planned to come to New Zealand. I was coming to New York. It was exactly 2 weeks before September 11. And the political trouble in Zimbabwe was rife. So anybody who had a passport was leaving the country. I was stopped in transit in South Africa, in Johannesburg, because the lady who was serving me picked up a misprint on my daughter's visa. So the US Embassy printed a 1 and 2 on the passport number of a visa sticker. And they told us we could not proceed. We had to go back to Zimbabwe to get it corrected. And that was one of the worst weeks in Zimbabwe's political history. There was bloodshed. It was the time when our dictator government was taking back all the land from the white farmers. It was horrible. And the US Embassy had to actually change its rules that week. And the new rule was I had to come back with a bank statement with $6 million before they would correct an error that they had made. It was a typo. We did not have that kind of money. We were stuck. We had sold our house, our car, our furniture, clothing, everything. And I remembered sitting at home and crying and thinking, what kind of a God would put me on a plane and send me back to hell? Because that's literally what it felt like. We were back in a room with 3 kids. We had a single bed and a small TV. That's all we owned. And then we watched as the Twin Towers came down on September 11. I was supposed to be in New York in a building very near the Trade Center. I was running workshops. I'm a batik artist. And missing that flight saved me from 2 major disasters because we were only spending a couple of weeks in New York. Our end destination was New Orleans. I had paid a deposit to rent a house that disappeared with Hurricane Katrina 2 years later. And so I ended up in New Zealand because I had a cousin. You'd picked up that my name is misspelled. I'm an African woman with a misspelled German name. My name is Getrude instead of Gertrude. But one of my cousins said she was on the hotline address book one day, just randomly looking at people's names, picked up my name, sent me this email saying, Getrude, where are you? You have to leave Zimbabwe. So I explained to her what had happened. I told her we were stuck. We had no money. And she said, if you have faith, find the money, beg, borrow, steal, come to New Zealand. You will not regret it. This is one of the most magical places to live. And so as an act of faith, we sold the last asset we had was a house we owned in South Africa. And I have been here almost 20 years. And it has been magical, absolutely magical. So I went into working as a systems analyst. I was a project manager. I held that position for a year, but my husband couldn't find a job here, so he had to go to Australia. And I decided to go into business so I could find a way to look after my kids and work from home. And I remember creating several companies in the most magical ways. The first one was a recruiting agency for health workers. My ex-husband was a doctor. I just literally wrote back to Africa to some of our friends and I said, I want to start a recruiting agency. Do you want to come to New Zealand? 5 of his friends said yes. I got them work. And in my first 3 months of business, invoiced $125,000 a month. I hit on $1 million idea. I ran that company for 13 years. I then got involved in the making of movies. So I used to be an actress in Zimbabwe. I had a little theater group. And when I got to New Zealand, I watched Peter Jackson filming Lord of the Rings. And it was such a fascinating space to be in as a storyteller, to watch the magic being done right here. And he started giving lectures and talks all over the city. A lot of his staff did the same thing. And I would go and attend all of these lectures. And then one day I plucked up the courage to ask if I could act in one of their films. And they were casting for the movie King Kong at the time, and they needed African Americans for the set. And so I went in for my audition. I was given 2 parts in the movie. I felt really special. But then I found out that they were actually trying to recruit 350 African extras. They gave me 2 parts because there wasn't enough people. And I went back to my IT skills and I said, can I create a database? I know a lot of African people. And so I literally created a database in 48 hours that I sold to Weta. And I supplied all the ethnic extras that took part in both King Kong and Avatar, and took part in both films myself. And that put me on this trajectory to become a filmmaker myself. I quit my day job, went back to college, and I've been working on a movie script based on my life story. And the backdrop to the story is the AIDS pandemic. So a lot of things have happened, and I seem to have a knack to attract the right people. It's almost like all you have to do is decide on what you want, and then the right people show up, the resources show up. You know, I had never written a film script before, but the ex-mayor of Wellington gave my book to Peter Jackson's wife and her business partner. And these are the women who won all the Oscars for Lord of the Rings and King Kong. And they've become my mentors, and they've been guiding me on how to write this movie script. But if I had said, 15 years ago when I wrote my first book, that I wanted to be the first African person to write, direct, and produce an Oscar, it felt weird and unreal. But I knew it was something that I had the ability to do. So I tend to work a lot with my future self. I believe that time is an illusion. Time doesn't exist. Your past, your present, and your future exist in the same timeline. So if I'm trying to figure something out, I ask my future self how we did it. Because she knows, she's already there, she has all the knowledge. And if there is something that you feel, that burning desire that you need to do, you have to know you have everything you need to make it happen.
Oh, that is so, so true, what you're sharing with us there. And the interesting thing is that, and we can't look at any specifics and say, well, this wouldn't have happened or this would have happened. But if you look at the overall scheme of things, if you wouldn't have been sent back to Zimbabwe, there's a process that happened there and a direction that happened there that really led you in some very, very magical places. And the question I have for you, because one of the things that I want the imagination to realize is that we all have these capabilities. We all can tap into the knowledge that you're tapping into, the wisdom, the guidance, the will that you're tapping into. What would you say to someone, Getrude, if they said to you that, well, that's Getrude, she's special, she's got these special gifts? What would you say to them?
I'll say to them, you have it too, you just don't know it and you haven't used it. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets, and the stronger it gets, the more you use it. I don't even think anymore when I make decisions. My decision-making process is based on a feeling. It's a feeling around people, around places. And when I get that feeling, I don't question myself. I will jump off a building with no parachute and know that I'll grow my wings on the way down. So we all have it. But a lot of people go into their heads and they start doubting. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have the skills. And we kill our own dreams before we even start. So you will never give it a dream unless you're supposed to bring it to life.
We squash the energy.
Exactly. That's why no two people will ever have the same idea and do it the same way. You might have the same idea, but you'll do it differently. So what I would say is you will feel fearful. People go into fear, and that's what holds a lot of people back. But feel the fear and do it anyway, because everything you want is on the other side of fear. And transmute that energy of fear, because it's just an energy, right? When I start to feel fearful, I get excited. I think, oh, that's scary, but what if I decided it's just exciting? It transmutes the energy because it's the same energy. It's you deciding how you want to use it.
Exactly. Very powerful. When you bring the vibration of fear into the higher vibration, that's love. And love creates so much in this world and opens so many doors. So as you were sharing, it's perception also. What gave you the perceptions of life the way that you're looking at them now? You've had a pretty tough life. You've lived in some pretty difficult situations. What gave you the perception that you're looking at life through now?
I would have to give that to my parents. I was gifted to have two of the most amazing human beings who nurtured me, who cared for me, who showed me that anything I wanted was possible. My dad was the visionary, and I cry because he died very recently, last year. When I was about 6 or 7, I remember my dad turned me into an entrepreneur. I loved money, and he would put money in his pockets. And my job every weekend was to clean out his wardrobe and fold everything away, and I'd find the money in the pockets. And I remember one weekend, I found this old pair of shoes at the bottom of his wardrobe, and I was about to throw them in the bin. They were so old and tatty. And my father walked into the bedroom and he said to me, "What are you doing with my shoes?" And I said, "They're old, they're horrible, I'm throwing them away." And my father said, no, don't do that. These shoes are magic," he said. And I remember him putting me on his lap. He had just come from work. And he pulled out a photograph of himself. And he was standing on the steps of the Colosseum in Rome in 1967, the year that I was born. My dad got a scholarship to go and study in London through the Catholic Church. But on his way to London, he had to stop in Rome to see the people who had given him the scholarship. And he turned the shoes over. They had no soles. And there were newspapers at the bottom of these shoes. And he pulled the newspapers out. They were in Italian, but the year was 1967, the year that I was born. And he said, "Getrude, I had to put newspapers at the bottom of these shoes to get on an airplane for the first time and fly to Italy." And he said, anything you want can happen if you can see it in here. So my dad taught me to see these big pictures. And I always had the desire to travel, because to make me read, he bought me a set of encyclopedias and a globe. And on a weekend, I would close my eyes, I would spin the globe and touch the country Then I'd had to go and get the encyclopedia and read up about this country and report back to him. So I became curious. I wanted to see the world at such a young age. And my dad did so much to help me see beyond what was in front of us. We were a very poor family, but there was so much more out there in the world. My mother, on the other hand, was the magician. My mother could transmute trash. She was good with her hands. You know, she could pick up a piece of garbage and turn it into something beautiful. I remember some of the flowers she used to make out of recycled bottles, and she used to sell the stuff, and we used to help her and make all these crafts. And I went to private school because of this. In Rhodesia, when African children received a substandard education, I got the best education money could buy. So my parents, they gave me all these gifts. They showed me the money through the cracks. They showed me opportunities where other people don't see them. So I could be dropped in the middle of a desert and I know I will survive. And that starting point of not having that not enoughness was the biggest gift that the universe ever gave me.
Wow. And you chose those parents. It was no accident that you came into the two of them, and they were able to guide you through life. You just mentioned that there are so many opportunities out there. What can you share with the imagination one opportunity that you would like to explore that you maybe haven't told anyone else yet that you're thinking of exploring?
Oh, wow. Opportunities and seeing possibilities is my biggest problem. I'm actually writing a book because they come at me 1,000 miles an hour. In any one given day, I could create 5, 6, 7 different business opportunities. And I don't have the time to do everything, so it's a good thing you asked me. So I started writing some of this stuff down in this. I'm going to actually publish it. So one of the opportunities that I am seeing right now is the ability to recreate people see different countries. You know, a lot of people come to Africa to see the wildlife and the vegetation, the landscape. We have such a rich, diverse ability to, our nature is one of the things that we still have preserved that the Western world has lost. And what I would love to see and what's missing for us in Africa is a transfer of knowledge. Africa is rich in everything. There is every mineral under the sun, but we don't have the knowledge on how to use our resources. So I see an opportunity for the creation of what I would call symbiotic tourism, where people don't go to a country just to see the sights, but they go to leave a piece of themselves there and take a piece back. So if you were to go into a new country and you go on a grassroots level, get to spend time with the locals, see how they live, see what resources they have, point out their blind spots to them. So in Africa, we sit on the acres of diamonds and we don't even see it. And ever since I started living in New Zealand, I've started seeing Africa in a completely different way. When I was there, all I could see was the poverty, the despair, the disease. Now I go back, I come back with a million ideas of what's possible. I'll give you a little example. So we have quartz, we have crystals in our community, in our village. Horrible, sharp crystal stones everywhere. We hate them. We don't have shoes. People hate these stones. And the last time I went home, and I've been there my whole life and I had not seen them, but I'd come to the Tucson Gem Show and I saw all these crystals being sold in Tucson. And I started thinking, we've got these back home. We could string them up and make jewelry. And so that's one thing I want to go back and do. But we sit on the acres of diamonds and we don't see it. But when somebody comes from another country with fresh eyes, then you can point out the blind spots. You know, it's the same thing here in New Zealand. I see numerous opportunities that the locals would never even think of doing. So that's the one thing that I think would really change the world, where people decide that, okay, I'm an engineer, I'm going to go on a trip to Pakistan. What could I go and do with the knowledge that's in my head? And you transfer what's in your head to somebody else in a country where that kind of knowledge is needed.
And if you go into those places with an open heart, you're going to bring back so much that you haven't been able to see in your own life either. We like to participate in and lead what we call sacred travel, but the sacred travel for us is doing just what you said.
Okay.
Having dinner with people that are different than you, learning really that, yes, there's different traditions, there might be different customs, but when it comes right down to it, as you said earlier, we're all one, and we are mirrors of each other in so many ways, and there's so much to learn from that. Oh, I love your opportunity that you shared with us, because like you said, it opens up so much, and really honestly, there's diamonds inside of each and every one of us, and other people can help us really see those diamonds inside of us too. So I'm going to use your diamonds as part of the title of our podcast today. Believe it or not, we're running out of time. Getrude, could you share one parting piece of advice that you'd like everyone to know before we have to call it a day?
Oh, I would say, don't take your gifts to your grave. My grandmother used to say that little babies are born with their fists closed, and they come in holding all their gifts. We come in holding our gifts, and some people will go to their graves with their fists closed. So if it's something that you're good at doing, share it. If it's a story you need to tell, write it. Don't go to your grave with your gifts. They say the richest places in the world are graveyards. They're full of people who had brilliant ideas, amazing knowledge, and they didn't have the courage to release it to the world. I think that would be my parting thought.
And that is so powerful. I'm not going to add a word to that. How can people get a hold of you and learn more about the circle, learn more about you, and really get an idea of what you're all about?
So you could find me through my TED Talk is a good place. If you go onto YouTube, if you want to know the full backstory, there's a 15-minute recorded presentation I've done for TED. My website is herstorycircle.com. And on that website, you will get all the information about the conference that I'm curating now and the social impact we want to have with this conference. And please take part if you can. It's open to both men and women. I've had a lot of men approach me. It started with one man who said to me, Getrude, I want to come and talk about my mother, because I would not be the man that I am if it wasn't for her. So it made me stop in my tracks, and I thought, I'm galvanizing all these women, but we need to bring our men folk to the conversation. What's the point of us getting together and talking about stuff that relates to women without the men being there to listen to us? So it's now open to both men and women. Please come on board and be one in a million. You will be the first million people to connect. This thing is much bigger than all of us. It's co-creating itself. It's just such a fascinating space to be in. Please join us on that journey. And thank you so much, Vince, for this opportunity to talk to your community, to share the miracles, because it's in the sharing that we create more.
Thank you very much. All that information will be available on the show page for everyone. There will even be a little bit of extra information to help you track Getrude down. As you can tell, she's a woman on the move, lots of opportunities in front of her, and she's an example for all of us to really look inside, find our gifts, and bring it to the world. Getrude, on behalf of Mary, my business partner, and the entire imagination, we want to wish you a miracle day.
Thank you so much. And you too. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleyou.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 mind-awakening steps toward your unique purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleyou.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.